Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first installment of this year's fall seminar series hosted by the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Center for Hellenic Studies at Simon Fraser University. My name is Dimitris Krallis, and I'm the director of the center, and I'll be moderating the discussion today. Now, here at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Center for Hellenic Studies, each year we invite scholars from all over the world working in different aspects of Hellenic studies to present their research on a wide range of topics in the fields of archaeology, classics, Byzantine, Ottoman, modern Greek history, and literary and cultural studies. But we do not constrain ourselves in the world of scholarship. We do try and have a more kind of rounded view of things Greek, if you wish. And today's talk falls very much into this category, since we are hosting Tassos Boulmetis, who's a film director. Now, before I begin, and before I introduce Tassos, who's with us, I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge that this event is taking place at Simon Fraser University on Burnaby Mountain, on the unceded traditional territories of the Squamish, Slaters, Musqueam, and Coquitlam peoples. Now, as a matter of housekeeping, I would like to remind everyone that this webinar is being recorded. If you have any questions or concerns about SFU's Zoom privacy and security guidelines, it might be too late to have those concerns since you're here. I would ask you to visit the SFU IT Services website. As for the online audience, if we run into a technical problem, we will update you in the chat, but please note that this event is in any case being recorded and will eventually be posted on our YouTube channel should you wish to follow it at a later date. Now, on the business of the day, I'm really pleased to present today's speaker, Tassos Boulmetis. Tassos is a celebrated film director from Greece who has produced films such as Touch of Spice, Mythopathy, and a film we screened here in downtown Vancouver, 1968, a film that a docu-fiction film focused on a very interesting moment of Greek athletic triumph with broader cultural implications. This was a really good experience having you there for this film. Now, Mr. Boulmetis may be a film director, but he came at it from maybe an unconventional path. He studied physics at the University of Athens, and only then eventually moved to film production and direction at the University of California at UCLA under Onassis scholarship. In Greece, he started his career as director and producer of TV shows on state TV networks, as the case would have been in the 80s when the whole TV landscape was much more restricted. And in the 1990s, he wrote, directed, and co-produced Dream Factory, which won awards in both Greece and the US. A Touch of Spice, POLITIKI, Kouzina, a film which he wrote, directed, and co-produced, came next and became the biggest in 1.6 million admissions. Keep in mind that this is a country of 10.5 million people in the latest census.
8 million this year.
Yeah, if we're realistic. So this was a big sort of event, and we will be discussing its implications today. It was distributed in 45 countries all over the world. His third feature, Mythopathy, is a coming-of-age story of a young man during the 70s, and is a sarcastic comedy about the Greek political system and its path to Greece's economic crisis. I'll stop here, and without further ado, I'll pass it on to Tassos.
Thank you, Dimitri. Thank you so much for being here. It's a great honor for me to be able to share my work and my thoughts with scholars and academics here in Simon Fraser University, as well as with members of the Greek community here in Vancouver. First of all, I have to thank Stavros Niarchos Foundation at Hellenic Studies at Simon Fraser University, because I have this opportunity. And of course, I have to thank my host, Professor Dimitris Kralis and his colleagues for the wonderful hospitality that I've been given here in Vancouver, being able to meet members of the Greek community and also meet distinguished artists and filmmakers. So probably the title sounds a little bit strange to you. In today's presentation, I will share with you the story of 3 journeys that took place in 3 different decades in my life. One geographical that created a trauma, another esoteric and inner journey, which helped me overcome the denial of my childhood homeland, and the final healing journey that led to the creation of a film, which already referred to Dimitris, Tassos, which actually helped me reconciliate with my past. Thus, the word sublimation refers to the process when art and creativity function as healing agents. Yeah. So, I was born in 1957 in the eastern part of Bosporus in Constantinople, today's Istanbul, and I had a very happy childhood. My everyday life was playing with my friends, Greeks and Turks, and my family also had relationship with Greeks and Turks. And all this ended in 1964, before there were political conflicts between Greece and Turkey. In order to understand the Greek-Turkish relationship, I have to give a very short account of how this relationship was developed since the beginning of the previous century. If we consider that Greek-Turkish relationships metaphorically as being a film production, the screenplay of this film was written back in 1908, where the screenplay was written in 1908. The first act happened in 1915, when we had the Armenian genocide. The second act was written in 1922, when we had the catastrophe of Smyrna. And also since then, we have many key dates of the relationship, dates that refer that devastating actions against Greek minority and also other minorities like the Jewish minority and the Armenian minorities had to face from the Turkish regime. In 1908, a few educated Turkish intellectual students, most of them doctors, having studied in France, decided to form a secret society, a group of young educated Turks, in order to establish a new nation on the land of the decaying Ottoman Empire. This group was called Neo-Turks. Although educated and assumably civilized, in order to complete their objective, their strategy was devastating, violent, because they decided, in order to have a clean, a pure country, a new state, to eliminate from the empire's lands all non-Muslim minorities. And these minorities were the Greeks, the Armenians, and the Jews. In this point, I have to make a disclaimer. When I refer to the violent relationship on Turks against the minorities, I'm referring to the regime. The relationship between Greeks and Turks is great. Turks are best friends. When we get along with them, we have a great time. My best friends are Turks. So the problem is on the regime, and especially in the deep Turkish state. In 1915, we have the Armenian genocide. In 1922, after the Greeks lost the war between Greece and Turkey, we had the exodus, the catastrophe of the Ionian land, which until that time was inhabited by Greek-speaking people since antiquity. 1942, we have the Varlik, which is a tax application on the minorities, on non-Muslim minorities. Every citizen who was non-Muslim and non-Turk had to pay an unbearable amount of money as a tax, which probably sometimes it was double its fortune, his fortune. Like you had the land, you had the money, savings, and the tax that you had to pay, it was 2 times the total of your fortune. So that would eliminate the possibility for these people to blossom, to do business, to do whatever. They were eliminated. And of course, we come to 1955, when the Greek Cypriots, being a majority in the island, in order to claim independence from the British colonialism, organized a paramilitary group called EOKA, which fought against the British establishment in the island. So the British government, faithful in their dogma, divide and conquer, encouraged the Turkish side, although a limited minority comparing to the Greek minority, to the Greeks of Cyprus, to claim equal rights on the administration of the island. So they helped the Turkish side to stage a fake accident, a bombing of the house of the founder of the Turkish state, Mustafa Kemal, known as Atatürk, in Thessaloniki. He was born in Thessaloniki. Since then, since 1955, every conflict that taking place in Cyprus between the two communities always was reflected to the Greeks of Istanbul. Of course, here I have to remind you that the problem is not between the people of Greece and Turkey, it's between the regimes. I remember 1964 as a very sad year because 2 years before, 1962 and 1963, there were strong conflicts between riots between the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots. And there were atrocities from either side, from both sides. And of course, as I told you before, this conflict reflected to the Greeks of Istanbul. I remember my mother in 1963 telling me not to speak Greek loudly on the streets, something which is unusual because we used to speak Greek and nobody would be bothered. We were very well accepted by neighbors, by the local businessmen. And also, you see those, what you see on your slide now, it says, wherever you find yourself in Turkey, you have to speak Turkish only. And also the other sign on the bottom says, don't do business with Greeks. Rumlara. Rum is how they call the Greeks of Istanbul because it comes from, they are descendants of Romans from Rome, so they were called Rums. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about the Treaty of Lausanne. In order to understand what was the status of the Greek men, because the Greek men of Istanbul were deported in 1964, I have to bring you back in 1923, where we have the signing of the Treaty of Lausanne, which is a treaty between Greece and Turkey after Greece lost the war between Greece and Turkey and the catastrophe of Smyrna. In that treaty, there is an article saying that there was an exchange of population. All Greek-speaking population of Asia Minor had to move to Greece, and all Muslims, that's important to remember, Muslims, and Turkish language speaking people, they had to move to the new foreign state of Turkey. There were two exceptions. The Greeks of Istanbul could remain, in the land of Constantinople, and also the Muslims of Western Thrace would also remain in their land. Those are the exceptions in one of the articles in Treaty of Lausanne. So, in order to understand why there was deportation in 1964, I have to tell you that according to this treaty, every newborn male of a Greek family in Istanbul, until he became 18 years old, he could be a Turkish citizen. When he would be 18 years old, he had to choose either to keep the Turkish citizenship, which meant that he had to go and serve to the Turkish army, which was not very favorable towards the Greeks, or to choose to be a Greek citizen in Constantinople. But in that case, he had to live on a temporary basis. He had every 2 years to require a residence permit. And of course, for many years, it was given this residence permit. My father decided, well, when I was born in Turkey, I was a Turkish resident, I was a Turkish citizen. And when I never went 18 years old, I never was in Turkey. I was 7 years old when we left. But my father, when he became 18 years old, he declared that he wanted to be Greek. So he didn't have to serve to the army. So every 2 years, he had to ask for a renewal of his residency. And that was exactly the article that the Turkish state in 1964, in order to eliminate all the Greeks of Istanbul, decided to stop renewing the residency of the Greeks. They couldn't be staying in that land anymore. They were given only 1 week to organize themselves. They were able to take 1 suitcase, only with clothing, and if I remember correctly, either $100 or $200 with them, and go and live and go in another place. 90% they chose Greece, but there were many who went to Europe. Some Constantinopolitans came to Canada also, and to United States as well, but 90%. Now, those men were 15,000 Greek men. Of course, they had families. So the family members went with them. So a total of 45,000 Greeks had to move from Istanbul, mostly in Greek. And this is a little clip from from those days as they pass the borders and they are accepted from the local. I mean, this old lady was a Greek of Istanbul, so she had to be deported. Excuse me. No, it's okay. So finally, in August of 1964, we moved from Constantinople to Athens. And of course, that was not something which was very pleasant for me. I was 7 years old by that time, and the fact that I was living in a beautiful city had triggered already a trauma, which of course continued when we landed in our new country. What were the consequences of this trauma? First of all, rejection from the majority of the locals. The first day I went to school, all the children, my fellow students in the class, they started raising and shouting to the lady and madam, to my teacher, madam, this person is a Turk. Of course, there is nothing bad to be a Turk, neither to be a Greek. By that time, those nicknames were, they had very toxic connotations. It was a bad word to say to a Greek that he's a Turk and the opposite side. Okay, and since then, a trauma started, which was ongoing for several decades, and of course, this is the subject of this presentation that I'm giving right now. Since the very, excuse me, the adaptation period lasted many years, and when finally happened, I adapted finally, because my conservative environment tried to put me in some pure Greek institutions like the Boy Scouts. I became a displaced Constantinopolitan of Greek origin. I wasn't very proud, actually. I was hiding my origin, my homeland. I was avoiding to say to my friends there in Greece that, you know, I'm from Constantinople. I wasn't very proud about that. And although very frequently my family would meet with friends and relatives from Constantinople, for me, Constantinople was a lost and forgotten land. And this denial lasted for 30 years. During high school, I started being interested in photography and in film. One day I saw two fellow students when I was in high school shooting a Super 8 film. And for me, that was an astonishing experience. I really loved it. And I said immediately, spontaneously, yes, I'm going to be a filmmaker. Of course, that was a conflict management with my parents, because by that time, filmmaking in Greece, it wasn't a very legitimate profession, or studying filmmaking was not a legitimate study. So I had to do some bargaining with my parents. And I decided that I should study physics, because physics, it was the second best thing that I would like to do. And then I will go and study film. My parents accepted that, hoping that I will forget my desire to become a filmmaker and become a decent public servant working in physics on whatever subject I could choose. Immediately after I enrolled to the university in physics, the first day, even before my enrollment, my typical institutional enrollment there, I went to a club which was founded by students of the university, which it didn't belong institutionally to the university, but it was a club for students that had artistic interests. That was the Theatrical Club of Athens University. And I joined this club because there were many people like me who wanted to study something different from what they wanted to do in their lives. And this is a document I'm going to show you. I think it's a real document to see how mid-70s looked in Greece, and how these students of this club were performing, doing some rehearsals on Hamlet. I remember we wanted to have this presentation of the theater. So this is from that period. Now I think here we have some music. I just remind you that we are 2 years after the fall of military government. So we were very active and very thirsty to be involved in the arts, in politics, in demonstrations, politically and culturally thirsty. Okay? So I spent all the years of my studies in physics by working mostly in the Greek film industry, which was rising by that time. And in order to make some pocket money, I worked for an avant-garde magazine in Greece, which was called Film. And I started translating articles about pioneer filmmakers, especially in North America. And I will mention three of them. You see them here. One was Gene Youngblood, who was a futurist who wrote an amazing book called Expanded Cinema. The other one was Shirley Clark, and the third one is John Whitney. Of course, I translated articles about Jonas Midas, Gregory Markopoulos, all these very, very avant-garde filmmakers. After I finished, well, by that time also, I was attending many, many films in the local cinemas. So I started having my first unofficial cinema education in film, and I saw all the big guys that later I became fan and, let's say, well, imitator of them in the film language. In 1978, I did my first short film, which was funded by the club that I was joining by that time. It was the only and first film that they supported. It's important, it's very interesting that I'll show you just half a minute of it, because later in my life, I found very interesting things about this film. So this is my very first short film back in 1978. I've been influenced by filmmakers that I was admiring by that time. This little kid that we see right here now is my doctor in Athens. He's a nephew of mine. Just 3 shots that I'm sharing with you from this film. And of course, after I finished studies in Athens, I was accepted at UCLA to study film. I went there with the support of Onassis Foundation, and it was a very critical moment, I would say, for the whole world, because the way I went at UCLA, it was the transformation period from analog to digital. As we are now and talking, everybody talks about AI. By that time, we were talking about personal computers, and nobody could believe that we owned personal computers. And I was one of the very first people who bought a personal computer by that time. So I had focused in 2 things, in 2 disciplines, on screenwriting and on technology. And I was very happy to find out that the people, the filmmakers, that the creators I was translating the work of during the 70s, they were all instructors of me at UCLA. I met them in person, and that was a very pleasant experience of my education. Of course, at UCLA, I saw thousands of films. In this point, I would like to refer to one film which was very influential, both artistically and ideologically. It was a film by Francis Ford Coppola. It's called The Conversation. If you haven't seen it, please see, it's been inspired. He produced that film between the two godfathers. It was inspired by the Watergate scandal. And the theme of the film was how technology can interfere with our private space. And that was very influential film. After I finished my studies at UCLA, I went to the army, and immediately I made my first film. It was influenced by conversation, which was called The Dream Factory. And actually, in that film, I was questioning what would happen if technology, actually, if a cable, metaphorically speaking, would ever invade the human psyche and goes that deep and can read what we have in mind, what we dream, the most remote thoughts and emotions that we might have. And of course, by that time, even the literature of science fiction, everybody would mention that if that happens, it would happen through hardware. But 40 years later, we find out that happens through software. Everybody is giving our information. I mean, we are giving our information and our emotional feelings to a software called Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. So we came to that age, and that film is still outdated. Making films in Greece, as you can understand, creates debts. And if you are in debt as a filmmaker, because very few films make it to come even, there is only one way to find the safe road to redemption: directing commercials. I will share with you two commercials I did. I spent many years by directing commercials. In the next 8-9 years, I directed over 500 commercials. I want to show you some of the commercials that I did, two of the commercials that I did. The first one is the cheapest one that I did, and the second one was the most expensive one that I did. So actually, this one that you will see, it's been shot in Cyprus, and it became very popular. It's a comedy.
Ίσον tweet της άλλης ότι εισήλθαμε. Βέβαια, Twitter αυτής, Wi-Fi, πού κανε βρίσκω.
Υπάρχουν φορές που χρειάζεται να έχεις ίντερνετ παντού. Με το mobile internet της ή τα mobile Vodafone, σερφάρεις όποτε θέλεις, με λιγότερη διαχρέωση ή με μηνιαίο πακέτο. Πάντα με ξεκάθαρες χρεώσεις.
Power to you. Sita Mobile Vodafone.
So for those of you speaking ancient Greek, they are speaking in ancient Greek. Anyhow, and this is a commercial that I did in Iceland. And that was an amazing adventure for me and a life learning. So, for several years, I directed and produced over 500 commercials, working in a production company specialized on technology and visual effects. During this time, I managed to pay back my creditors and to offer myself a decent lifestyle. I had accomplished everything I wanted for my well-being. I had become a well-respected professional in the advertising world industry. I had traveled a lot in the planet, but there was something missing. I was a successful commercial director, but I was not a filmmaker. And always my dream was to become a filmmaker. And I decided to quit from the company, losing a big amount of money because I violated my agreement with them, which was to work in the company for some years as a director and producer, and eventually to become a CEO of this company. But this was not the life that I had dreamed of. So I found myself in a midlife crisis. I was depressed and alienated from friends and family. And this was the moment where a very good friend of mine gave me a life-changing hit, which triggered the most beautiful journey in my life. She said, "Don't you think it's time to go back?" And then I realized that the last 30 years, I had been almost in all the world, but I had never went to my homeland, which was only 50 minutes by plane. And the next day, without any second thoughts, but with a little fear, I took the next flight to Constantinople, a journey that would become the journey of my life. So I took my camera, which by that time it was an analog camera, and I recorded almost every single step that I did for 3 continuous days. It's strange, it sounds strange, but during these recordings, I had my camera on my waist because I wanted to record all this adventure from the point of view of a 7-year-old boy when actually I had the age. Of course, this is an idea that I have stolen from Steven Spielberg. He showed E.T. all from the point of view of the alien friend and from the little kid. So I did the same. And for 3 days, I had my camera. And here, okay, this is very interesting. This, what you're going to see now, it's almost 1.5 minutes. It's been shot in 1994. I think it was December 1994. Exactly 30 years after 1964, when I had moved from Constantinople. I was walking with the camera and I found my father's grocery store, my grandparents' grocery store. I found my father's leather store. I found the little park that I was playing when I was a kid, the church that I was baptized, and I went to the school. I found the school just by instinct. I was walking and I found, 30 years, they were inside. There was an emotional GPS inside me and guided me to all these places. I went to the school that I had the first grade of my elementary school there. I rang the bell, and who opens the door? The teacher that I had 30 years before. She doesn't recognize me. She speaks to me in Turkish. I reply in Greek. She says, "Who are you?" I say, "The son of Sophia." Sophia was my mother's name. They were very good friends. She started crying. And you will see a couple of shots with her. So this is the film.
Κυρίες και κύριοι, σας παρακαλούμε να σβήσετε τα τσιγάρα σας για την προσγείωση.
Put off your cigarettes. By that time, we could smoke in the plane. And this is the first picture that I had after landing in Istanbul. Here is on my way to find my birthplace, that the apartment building that we were living. I used to play 7-year-old here in this, and it can change. I went there recently and they have remodel it all, but that was as it was in 1964. And this is my teacher. I had in the first class, in the first year, 1964. As you can imagine, that was a journey of my life. And I thought that I should share that story while I was still in Istanbul. Of course, smells, memories, nostalgic memories, violent memories, and most of all, tastes came to me from the old days. So I decided that I should share this story and I should make a film. And I started writing a screenplay, which took almost 8 years to be written. The title of the film was POLITIKI kouzina. I'll explain to you because the title has a double meaning. So almost 9 years later, actually 8 years later, we went into the production of this film. So the word POLITIKI kouzina, the word POLITIKI has double meaning. Depending when you put the accent on the word POLITIKI, it gets a different meaning. If you put the accent on li, POLITIKI kouzina, that means the cuisine of polis. And because us Greeks call this the Constantinople, the polis, the eternal city, the ultimate city, it means the food of Constantinople. If you put the accent on ki, then the meaning goes political cuisine. So the word POLITIKI or POLITIKI, it was written by capital letters, and the spectator, the viewer, would put the accent wherever he preferred. So we did this film. It was shot both in Greece and in Turkey. And I have to share with you a little bit about the process of writing the script because it had many ordeals. Because after 1994 up to 2000, there were so many different political situation between Greece and Turkey that I was writing the screenplay hoping that I would do shooting in Greece, and suddenly we had the EMEA case, the dispute about what considered to be now a gray area, which I certainly believe it was a Greek area. It is a Greek area, island. Then after a while, then things became a little bit better, but we had also the problem with the Kurdish leader, Öcalan, and again, I had to put the screenplay in the drawers again. And 2 years later, there were the earthquakes in Turkey, and the Greeks helped all the Turks and provided assistance, and our relationship became very hot. So thanks God, I had the opportunity to go in Turkey and shoot the film, and that was one of the best professional experiences that I had in Istanbul, actually in my professional life. Also, I have to tell you that I had 4 prospective enemies by writing this script. These were the Greeks of Istanbul, the Greeks of Istanbul who would live in Greece, the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And probably now I remember maybe the Cypriotic Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So all those were prospective enemies, because when I was writing the script, I was thinking that at least some of them would be, well, if not insulted, they would be annoyed from this story. Fortunately, everybody loved the film, including the Turks. And of course, I've been accused for that because they said it's a friendly film towards the Turks, which it is actually, because, but it's not, it shows what the regime did to us. It is the story. I'll share with you in a while the trailer of it.
Η ζωή μας είναι όμως την Ελλάδα.
Dışişleri Bakanlığı sözcüleri, Yunan hükümetinin Türkiye'ye karşı olan dış politikasını şiddetle protesto etmişler.
Μικρός πρέπει να βγει από την κουζίνα. Όσο δεν το γυρίσου, χρησιμοποιώ με γερέτη.
Ξέρετε ότι παίζει όλο με κοριτσάκια. Να δείτε στη μέση και τους μαγειρεύει.
Εσύ θα υποσχεθείς που θα παίξεις φανταγόρια και εγώ κοίτα τη συμβαίνει.
Στο πουλάκι. Ναι, αλλά με αυτά που κάνει θα σκοτώσει το δικό του το πουλάκι, βρε για βρήμα.
Ναι, με ρίχνει από το μαγαζί του Παππούσου και είναι φιλανάδα που έχεις μικρός. Δεν θυμάται ένα καθόλου.
Ενός του Εμίλια πάνω σε αυτήν είναι. Why didn't you come back all these years?
Not really. We were deported to
This film was presented in October of 2003, and I was never expecting the impact that it would have in the Greek audience. It was something amazing. Nobody would expect that. By that time, the Greek films, they would have an audience of 50,000 viewers for the total career of the film. And suddenly, after 6 months, this film had 1.5 million viewings, which is still, they say that it still has that record untouched. It was amazing what happened. The impact of the film, it had many different implications. First of all, of course, distributed in 45 countries on the planet, it obtained several awards in film festival. It was considered one of the 10 best films of that year. And also it was Greece's official entry for the Academy Award. But there were two more implications that were more satisfying for me, actually three. The main was the fact that because of the reaction of the audience, and especially from the Constantinopolitan people, I felt really reconciliated for having all this guilt and innocent feelings about my origin. I started to feel proud about it. And immediately after the film, the community of the Greeks of Istanbul, they would consider themselves a minority, and suddenly they consider themselves a community. And since then, it was funded a global, the Ecumenical Federation of Constantinopolitans, which states that the fact that we are not living in Constantinople now doesn't mean that we are not Constantinopolitans. So we are hedged, global community that we have this homeland. We share it, and also the legacy goes to the new generations. Something which made me really proud was the fact that because of the success of this film, the private investors started funding with private money the Greek filmmakers since then, and we had the blossom of the Greek films, and I was really proud of it because many Greek filmmakers rose from that era. I didn't intend that. I didn't expect that to happen. However, it happened because the film was so expected and the word of mouth was amazing. I have only 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes because I want to share with you something really interesting that happened. When I was telling you about the first film that I made when I was at the university, it was just a story that I really didn't know. It was a thriller, actually. And it was a story about a young person who left his country because of a devastating catastrophe, and he wants to return to his homeland. This man was he was a Greek from Egypt, from Alexandria. When I was doing that film, never occurred to me that I was telling my own story. By that time, when I was in the university studying physics, I was 22 years old. And I thought that I was writing just a new fiction. But I found out that they say that the filmmakers always, they say the same story. Actually, all the creative people, they fight the whole life to say the same story with different ways. So I just want to show you, well, this is a statement that I ended up, that in the first movie of a young filmmaker, there is hidden valuable psychoanalytical material, which will be revealed later in their career, especially in their first feature film. And here, you will see the similarities that I wasn't aware of, neither when I was doing my first film. I didn't know that I was talking about my history, my story, but nor when I was doing POLITIKI kouzina, I had related my very first short film in 1970s with this film. So these are all similarities. Both film, the first one, Nilo 1978, it's a very naive film. Whoever wants to see it, if you type Nilo 1978 in the YouTube, you can see it. It's only 30 minutes. And POLITIKI kouzina, for those of you that you're present, I will ask the distribution company, in case you want to see it, I will be more than happy to send you private links in order to see it. So the similarities are, in the first one, you remember I told you that this little baby is my doctor now, memories of maternal food, and we had fixation on maternal food in POLITIKI kouzina. Violent separation from a birth city, and we have violent separation from birth city also in POLITIKI kouzina. Description of a displacement journey, the same in POLITIKI kouzina. Wounds of catastrophe in both films. Reconciliation and return to the birth city, reconciliation and final departure from the birth city in POLITIKI kouzina. So these are visual comparisons of the two films. And of course here, this is something that I teach to my students as well, especially those ones who are doing their first film. they should be careful because they'll probably find the same themes either in content or visually in the next 40 years when they will make bigger films. So here are the relationship, the visual relation of the two films. By the way, it was very interesting to find out that in all my films, for some reason which I couldn't understand yet, I always shoot in cemeteries, whatever that means. Well, since then I have made another 2 feature-length films. The third film is called Mythopathy, Notias, and it's a personal account of my coming of age during the 70s. And the most recent film is 1968, which was asked to be made by the basketball team of AEK in order to celebrate a huge victory that took place in 1968 in Athens. It's not only an athletic film, it's a political film, documentary, docu-fiction as well. So that was it. Once again, I want to thank you so much for being here today. I would like again to thank Stavros Niarchos Foundation of Hellenic Studies in Simon Fraser University, and of course, Professor Dimitris Kralis for having me, giving me the opportunity to address to you. I will be happy to answer your questions.
Well, thank you so much for this. And the whole theme of things we create being in some fashion very personal, I wonder how many scholars should actually think about it, and how many historians should think about how we imagine the past, and how we reconstruct the past, and how much of that might often be very personal and not as impersonal and objective as we might feel. And it's not necessarily a bad thing for things to be personal, at least you have the motivation to have passion about something. Yeah. So without further ado, can we pass it to our audience? Questions, conversation, discussion. Len.
Now, when you making film during the time of the contract,
If I made films during
were
the
you making film?
No, I was 13 years old by that time. I was not making. My first short film was shot in 1977, 2 years after the junta fell. Yeah, but there was a blossoming new Greek cinema during the junta years. It was by a little bit older than me filmmakers who just had come from either Paris a little bit after the May of '68, and also from other European countries that they had studied film. So there was a blossoming film industry which was more intellectual oriented than the one that we had before until the end of '60s, where we had a very entertaining and very commercial comedies mostly from the industry. Please.
Wonderful presentation. Very, very much.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, to a 7-year-old, you wouldn't have mattered at all. But in 1964, what actually precipitated this move by the Turkish government to do this expulsion just at that time?
Because 2 years before, there were very violent conflicts in Cyprus. Okay? So, because every time there were conflicts in Cyprus, they were reflected, it was a good opportunity for the Turkish regime to get rid of the Greeks. So that was the final, let's say, well, I don't want to use, the expression final solution for the Turks, because then they did also the invasion in Cyprus, and also some other Greeks left Istanbul. And now there are only 2,000 Greeks in Istanbul remaining there because of this strategy and this politics. So it was the conflict between the two communities in Cyprus. Always the conflict and turbulence in Cyprus reflected to the Greeks of Istanbul. And that was they wanted to find an excuse in order to kick us out. So that was the excuse.
I'm also curious, part of the way that goes back to section of the was the longer process of making the film on the components, an extension of that feeling?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. First of all, well, until the premiere of the film, I wasn't. I had just done only my first feature-length film, which had only 16,000 viewers, and mostly were my aunts and my uncles from the 16,000. Okay, and nobody knew me. After the second day of POLITIKI kouzina, who came on the cinemas, all television channels were outside my house waiting to go out, and for me that was something a little bit scary. I didn't enjoy it that much. There was satisfaction because of the success of the film, but I really didn't like the fact that, that year I became the man of the year. What does that mean, the man of the year? I was, everybody was talking about that film. It was very influential, not only to the people from the Greeks of Istanbul, but the whole Greeks. And for something that I'm very proud of is the fact that this film is very popular in on Greeks of diaspora. Every Greek of diaspora have seen that film because in a certain way is related to the theme of the film. So the healing process, of course, it was extended after the success. And what is the best benefit having from that film is the fact that it gave me the possibility to travel and meet audiences. Now I'm preparing a new film and a new series, but I'm also teaching. And actually, after Vancouver, I will go at UCLA and teach for the next quarter. And I find, tremendous joy to transfer my humble knowledge and my experience to younger filmmakers. And this is beautiful. Travel for the planet and meet people like you, which is great. It's a treasure. It's a gift. That's the most beautiful thing I would expect, and I really enjoy. Go ahead.
So, yeah, thank you so much for coming. That was really great to hear you, and it was great to see your movie a couple of weeks ago. You talked a lot about how POLITIKI kouzina was received in Greece, but I'm curious, like, what's the reception of that film like in Turkey?
Okay, that's a good question. First of all, I had a Turkish co-producer. And actually, it was an institutional and financially very strong co-producer. He was a partner of Village Roadshow, which was the funding company of my film in Greece. Village Roadshow is an Australian-based company, huge company, distribution company and production company as well. So the Greek branch produced POLITIKI kouzina, but also they had a branch in Istanbul. So they were about to distribute the film in Istanbul. But the posters were ready, everything was ready, the premiere was ready, and suddenly the film was banned. I don't know the real reason. I have heard from journalistic sources the fact that the problem was not political, it was military. It was because, I know you're going to laugh with this. I don't know if it's true. So I'm not saying that as a fact, just as a conjecture. It's because a Greek man falls in love with a woman who previously was married to a Turkish military man. That was an insult to the military people, so they asked to be banned. This is what I was told. I don't know if it's true or not. The fact is that the film never has played in the cinemas, but has played many times after midnight in the Turkish television. The Turkish intellectuals, especially in the big cities, they know the film, they love the film. I never had the slightest objection to the film by Turks. In several festivals that I have traveled abroad, Turkish people would come and start crying and kissing me. So that was a very moving experience. But in Turkey, unfortunately, this is what happened.
So hearing your story, thank you for sharing it. A lot of us have multiple backgrounds in different countries.
I'm sure about
and
that.
Especially in Canada, so I think it resonates here. And I'm curious, it's hard not to be thinking about the concept of split identity as I listen to your story, and especially about the values of nationalism, and probably how you thought about your own nationalism compared to people in the audience who may not have the insights that you have. And is there some themes there that you share with us that have all done you?
I would like you to repeat a little bit to understand what theme should I comment on.
Well, I guess, I think it's a common challenge for people to wrestle with identity.
Okay.
From many perspectives. In your case, you have very favorable experiences with friends in both countries and as well as challenges. And so, when you think about your own identity compared to the audience that hasn't had that type of an experience, what would you say is the biggest sort of learning that you wanted to share? Say, I haven't seen a movie yet, so maybe share.
I have to share with you two stories, short stories. One of them was from an Albanian woman who saw the film in Thessaloniki, and during the showing of the film, television channels, the first 2-3 weeks, they were outside the cinemas taking interviews from the audiences. So they asked her, "What do you think of the film?" And she said, crying, "With this film, we obtained memories for a life that we did not live." Do you understand what I mean? Is it αποκτήσαμε μνήμες από μια ζωή που δεν ζήσαμε? There is another story which I found really interesting, and probably this what I'm going to tell you, it's the only story that I would share after the success of the film. I happened to be in Buenos Aires at the same period that the film exited in Buenos Aires, made its appearance there. And actually, it was very successful in Latin America, in Buenos Aires, of course, obviously. So I was invited to a place, of a friend's place, and she introduced me to her friends. And she told that Tassos is a filmmaker whose film is now on the cinemas in Buenos Aires. So one of the ladies there said, "Oh, yeah, I've heard about it, I'm gonna see it." There was another lady who said, wait, which film? Is this the one that my grandmother from Patagonia called me and asked me to go and see it? The Greek film. So there is an old lady in Patagonia that knows about Greek people of Istanbul, that they had to move. And this is an amazing story. And you see, these people, the audience that you're telling, they have different backgrounds. Some of them, maybe it's not very cheerful, as probably it was mine, which was not 100% cheerful, but they relate to the film. And this is the magic of films and movie making. I mean, that story changed a lot about how I see films. Of course, I'm not very optimistic about the future of filmmaking, but this is not the subject of this presentation. And I don't want to put you in a bad mood about that because of several reasons. I hope things will get better with the streaming things and AI and all this happening now in technology. But let's not get into that now. Please.
Going back to Istanbul, years, that structure, the city is quite different from Istanbul with the travel.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's the city has changed a lot through the decades because there were many internal immigrants from inside Turkey who came to find a better way of life in Istanbul. And now I would say, I mean, when I was in 1964, Istanbul had 1 million people at the most, and now it has 20 million people. It has changed 100%. Of course, for me, I'm obsessed with things that I remember from the past, and I always go to the same places. I was telling to Professor Krailis before that very often I go to a place that it worked for me as a magic, which was the cistern of Justinian, for those of you studying Byzantine. Okay, I go to that place. When my father was deported, I stayed with my mother for additional 2 weeks there in order to organize things. So for some reason, well, it was very justifiable reason, she took me to several places of interest in Turkey. And one of them was the cistern of Justinian, which was, for me, it was an amazing place. And especially when I visited again after 30 years. And every time I go back to Istanbul, it was like a pilgrimage. Although I don't like how they have decorated it, you know, with all these disco lights and all. I mean, yeah, Turks are not very good on that. But I used to say that this place, it's like an X-ray of my deep psyche. It has been registered inside me since I was 7 years old, and I always want to go back and see that place. It's amazing. And I was telling to Dimitri, I read recently an article that when Constantinople was occupied by the Ottomans didn't fight the cistern immediately. They found it 100 years later. How did they find it? Because they saw the Romans, I would say Byzantines, Dimitri would say Romans, they were fishing from their gardens above the cistern. They would fish. And the Ottomans started questioning what's happening here. So they digged inside and they found the cistern 100 years after the conquer of Constantinople.
I was thinking about the movies. One of the first law was, in fact, is it possible for those of us who would like to see the movies? The one on people seeing.
You mean if you want to see?
See the new movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a way? Is it on YouTube?
Well, illegally it's in YouTube. For the present audience, I will arrange with Dimitri so you can take a private link and watch it. For those of you haven't seen,
So write to me.
I would like to ask you not to spread the link around. But yes, I will certainly, after I get the okay from the distribution company, which always they give me the okay. I have great relationship with them, and I will be able to send you a link to see it with English subtitles.
So follow-up question, that's wonderful. I look forward to seeing the movie. And it just occurred to me, there's another famous city where the Greek population was expelled, and that is Alexandria.
Of course.
And I'm wondering if any Alexandria has done a kind of similar movie or inspired by your movie. Or...
Inspired by my movie, I don't know. I do know many people who are second generation from Greek Egyptians, as we call them, Ελληνοegyptiotes. That I do know a couple of filmmakers that they are from Alexandria. I haven't seen any film yet from these people, and I don't know if anybody's gonna do, and I don't know if they have inspired by this film as well.
I mean, it seems like it'd be very interesting to have that been done.
Things were not that violent for these Greeks. It was only, they had only economic sanctions. They had to leave. Of course, there were deportations actually, and their fortunes were confiscated from the government from the Nasser government in 1952. But there is no a history of Greek-Egypt relationships on compared to the Greek-Turkish relations. I mean, Egyptians are great allies with Greeks now.
Just some clarification. As a child, were you bilingual? And
Yes, yes. Actually, I was trilingual. I had just started speaking English, very, very bad English. As you realize, my English is not that very good, but it's okay. I can cope with it. Yeah, I was bilingual. I was speaking fluent Turkish. And in 1 week, I forgot the language.
But in 1994, did any of it?
I speak touristic Turkish. I can go there and order a beer, probably two.
Just one slightly more lighthearted question. You've really been making me want to watch more Greek movies. I haven't seen a lot. I really should. What do you recommend?
Wow. Well, probably you have heard about this great Greek director that we have now, Yorgos Lanthimos. Lanthimos now, he's doing a great job with his latest film, which of course I haven't seen because 3 days ago it was premiered in Venice. So you should certainly see the works of Lanthimos because his themes, some of his films in the first film reflect what was going on in Greek society from his point of view. Okay, you should certainly see films of Nikos Perakis. You should certainly see films of Theo Angelopoulos. Well, of course, you have to see, well, Michael Kakoyannis is my favorite, and you should see. Well, Iphigenia, which of course I teach Iphigenia at UCLA. And, but rather you should see the Greeks of Kakoyannis who are focused on Greek society. Okay? You're very welcome.
So we are gonna wrap things for this part of the day. Those of us who are here have an opportunity to move to our lounge for very light snacks and non-alcoholic drinks, because SFU, let's face it, is a bit conservative on this issue, speaking of conservative families.
Okay.
I would like to really thank you for this wonderful presentation, but also for joining us here through this SNF-funded pilot project, which aims to bring scholars, but also people of the arts from Greece to Vancouver. We're really lucky to have such an opportunity to have a close contact with creators straight from Greece. And I would like to ask to thank our audience, both at SFU, but also online for being with us, and stick with us. Go on our website, follow our schedule of talks, which are going to be coming up throughout this semester, and keep the dialogue going. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.